shoots across Mexico, and then can swing up in a nor'easter type of fashion along the East Coast.
Well, so, now, isn't there a danger of microengineering the weather? I mean, yeah, that seems like it would eventually lead to having to, I mean, nature used to handle this. If people are doing this, is it just in America? Is it all around the world? Then they're microengineering full time at the cost of probably trillions of dollars of money underneath the radar, literally. The weather, which is then up to somebody who's sitting in a bank of some kind of control room?
Right. You've got it exactly. That's exactly what they're doing. And what they do is they have to. How I like to explain it is the planet's weather has been digitized, and that means there's just literally tens of thousands of cells in the atmosphere that they independently heat and cool, and through resonance, large-scale wave resonance, then they can create a vibration conductive to rain or to snow or to high pressure.
What about tsunamis and earthquakes?
If they're capable of spinning up a hurricane, then an earthquake is not out of the realm of possibility, and in fact is probably far, far easier to do than the very delicate dance that they're required to do in the atmosphere. Because in the atmosphere, they have to literally target, apply the electromagnetic solution, then go out and measure what they've just done. And that requires another round or another sortie of chemtrail flights.
Oh my God!
So it's like putting little electrical wires in the sky that's fluid and moving. And so then you watch these little lines deform. If they're deforming, that data then, as those lines deform, that they pull that data back into a supercomputer. The supercomputer computes the solution for a line of thunderstorms raging through the southeast. And if they're happy with that, then they'll let it be. If they want to adjust it a little farther north, then they apply another EM solution. Boom, run another set of flights out to see if that did what they needed it to do. And also, how do you know what part of the sky and what layer of the sky you're shooting at if you don't put a target out there?
All right.
And that's something else that chemtrails are there for, is to provide a targeting mechanism.
Oh. Now, there's something really important that we need to clarify for everybody, because this is a question that keeps coming up, and it's a form of denial that many people have. What is the difference between contrails, which are a natural occurring part of a jet's flight, and chemtrails? Just so we know what's the difference.
Well, my opinion, and that's all it is, but it's the result of thousands of hours of observation and thousands of hours of high definition camera photography, is that there are very, very few natural contrails left. I mean, on the order of sub 5%. Less than 5% of all the trails you see are contrails. The other 19 in 20 are chemtrails. And that even means the very, very short ones that last 2 and 3 seconds. Those are still chemtrails. It's just a different mixture.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, how many? We've all watched the image ads of GE. GE is trotting out this new turbofan engine for the commercial airliner, and it's so clean, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And it is. And it is. It is a clean engine. The problem is these airlines are carrying a payload that has to be dispersed from takeoff to landing.
Wow.
And because they engineer the weather, they know exactly, a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks ahead of time what payload they're going to need and when.
Wow.
So it's so easy to load up Southwest flight, and I tell you, Southwest, United, Delta, Northwest, UPS, FedEx, DHL, British Airways, Lufthansa, Singapore Airlines, Japan Airlines. All of these airlines participate in this program. All of them.
Wow.
All of them. You do not have license to fly.
Wow. I guess they'd almost have to. to cover all that area.
Well, and whoever is operating this then paints their planes that don't have any passengers on them to look like Southwest, to look like Delta, to look like Northwest. Because it's the only way you could mix these warbirds in with the commercial planes just to disguise them.
Yeah.
And we all know how bright the people are.
Yeah.
Not very. They're not very bright right now. And their attention is absolutely not directed skyward.
No.
It's not there.
No, it isn't. What does the ordinary person that's hearing this show look for in the sky to see for themselves what we're talking about? Besides,
I think the biggest
on your site.
No, the best thing is, and, honestly, Lance, I don't expect anybody to, for me to convince anybody. The only way that happens is by your own observation. You have to go out and spend, on a day where there's a lot of trails in the sky, spend 30 minutes to an hour, pull out a chair, and just start watching.
Yeah.
And you'll see how these planes are very, very, very interested in the cirrus clouds, in the behavior of the trails that are already up in the sky. These planes love to clip the ends of old trails. They love to bisect gaps in these old trails. They love to reset zero lines, essentially flying exactly along that old trail and resetting the line. They love to do this stuff. And because we're at ground level looking up, we really have what is a very flat or two-dimensional view of this. Yeah. It would be nice to be able to go up to 25,000 feet and see it dimensionally.
Oh, yeah.
That would really, really be cool.
Oh, it would be.
So,
now, these are all being monitored from satellites, I'm assuming, and that's how they do that's how they're seen from a distance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think satellites run like 98% of the kind of surveillance they do to see how the trails are behaving and how fast they're drifting and how quickly the powders are dispersing. Are those powders dispersing upward or downward? And so forth. But that means because they probably have, 11, 12, 13, 1,400 planes in or on this continent alone working on this program, then they can come along and, 10 minutes after one of those trails has been laid out that has the little puffs, the poof, poof, poof. You see those puff marks all the time.
I've seen those, yeah.
And you'll see how those powders will then turn into a helical spiral, or those powders will then be pulled upwards in an upward vertical motion, or they'll be puffed downward in downward vertical motion. Downward vertical motion is a stable atmosphere. It's subsidence. It creates heat. And in a drought heat wave situation, those powders will always go down. If they're in the process of creating thunderstorms and lift, then those powders go up. And they'll sometimes run another small business jet, a little Cessna or a little Learjet or an Embraer, or, these little small jets. They'll come along and run the tops of these old chemtrails just to see how much they've dispersed in 10, 20 minutes. But it's what I don't have the greatest grasp on right now, Lance, is the ground operations. Where are all these planes run in and out of? I would love to stake out DIA or, Denver International, or I'd like to stake out Albuquerque or, the airport at Victorville or LAX or, Portland or Seattle. There's all of these airports that they could easily intermix these planes into.
Yeah.
And roll them into a hangar, drop them down, reload them, roll them out. So many of them, all the chemtrail planes have little wingtips on them, the little winglets. That gives them extra lift, gives them another 3 to 4% endurance, and I bet most of them are serviced at night. They land at night, they take off at night.
Well, another thing that comes up in talking about this is if they're dumping all this stuff into the sky, into the atmosphere to heat it up or manipulate the weather, number one, what's in them and how might it affect our health? If there's metals in there, what else is there in them? And why haven't we been consulted as to our ability to say, well, we don't want this?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of things we'd like to bullhorn to the government that we want or don't want. And that ain't gonna happen.
But isn't there a danger of these things? These things all come. Whatever they're putting up there, what goes up, if it's heavier than air, it's going to fall down. And I've heard of people finding all kinds of sticky substances, and there are dark chemtrails, and people getting sick and having constant respiratory problems after spraying. And according to Clifford Carnicom's site, there's dried bacteria, dried blood, there's nanoparticles. Some people even link them to Morgellons disease.
Yep. And none of that I could say isn't happening. I can't say that isn't happening. I wish I could. And that was the last part of me to let go into this, into the grand operation, was that there are biologicals. But we know that in this war for the human spirit, they don't want us in a state of health. They don't want us thinking clearly. They don't want us in a position to question their authority.
Right.
And so they will chip away at us in any way they can get away with. And you can go on to Clifford Carnicom's site at carnicom.com. And there's also been some, honestly, all you have to do is Google what's in a chemtrail or chemtrail air quality samples or something like that, and you'll find it. You really don't have to look that hard to get the hoedown on what's in them. There's a guy in Phoenix who set out a HEPA air filter at night, and he did it on consecutive days, over a span of some months. And what he came up with was just absolutely astounding. The gross pollution that we believe we created the FDA or the EPA in the 70s to protect us against. But when you query the FDA or the EPA on these issues, all they say is that we are not tasked with sampling for these metals, for these chemicals in the air. We're not supposed to look for them. That's their reply.
Wow. So, and then what about the idea that there's a big brouhaha about global warming? Is it or isn't it? If these heat up the ionosphere, isn't that something that would be most likely to contribute to global warming?
And this has been where I've been wrestling with this issue for the last 3 years. Is the climate change? How much climate change is natural and how much is man-made? Yeah. And it's my firm opinion that since the Russians began this in the 70s, in 1976 specifically, that we have lost our baseline to what's really happening with the climate, and that we don't know and can't know where our climate truly is because of this. Because one thing that has happened over the last 20 years is that the ratio of high clouds, cirrus clouds, to low clouds, stratus or cumulus, has doubled. We have twice the amount of high cloud cover now that we did 20 years ago. And of all of the long-term climate models, my understanding is that there are only 2 that include aircraft-generated contrails in the energy budget.
Wow.
And those that do contain aircraft-generated contrails in the Earth's energy budget, all of those say that is a positive feedback that accentuates the warming. Something else, Lance, that I don't know that you're going to want to hear, is that beginning in 1998, 1988, they began to automate the surface weather observing systems. Until then, they would send a human out every hour to observe the sky, take notes, and then code the report and send it. And then, like if it's San Francisco, it's SFO, and they would say, let's talk about describing the clouds. Broken clouds at 1,800 feet, broken clouds at 4,500 feet, and then thin overcast at 20,000 feet. And that could mean some cirrus clouds coming in. Now it's all automated. We don't even require that humans go out and look at the sky. A machine does.